not come to rest on a place 4 tefachim wide to be considered Reshus HaYochid. Doesn't have to be placed on 4 tefachim wide, even if it's standing on a pinnacle. Ela Acha, rather here, Rabbi and the sages disagree. In the case of a tree that is standing in a private domain, its branches extends into the public domain. And a person standing in the public domain threw an object which came to rest on one of its branches. The branch, however, is not 4 tefachim wide. But what did we say? We say the branches are extending into the public domain. So he threw it from public to public, really. The branches were not 4 tefachim wide. The Rabbi Sovar, Rabbi maintains Amrinan Shidei Noifa Bosari Kore. We say that the branches of the tree are accorded the status of its trunk, and therefore, even though air-wise, meaning airspace-wise, it's in Reshus HaRabim, because the branches are extending to public domain, but Rabbi says we follow the trunk, and the trunk is on Reshus HaYochid, so therefore, so he's chayav because he threw it from public to private. The Rabbanon Savrei we do not say that the branches of the tree are accorded the status of its trunk, and therefore we threw it from public to public. If one standing in a private domain throws a basket made of reeds into a public domain, and the basket is 10 tefachim high, big basket, but not 6 tefachim wide. So 10 high, less than 6 wide. Chayav, he is liable. The Chava Shisho, if it is 6 tefachim wide, Potter is exempt because he has not transferred an article, but rather a domain. Interesting case. It says
the basket is the domain itself?
Yeah, look at number 7. It says the malachos forbidden on Shabbos are all derived from the labors performed in the construction of the Mishkan. Now, the only throwing that occurred in the Mishkan was when craftsmen tossed needles to each other as they worked. The only precedent we have for throwing is for small object, not objects large enough to constitute a reshus, a domain, in their own right. Therefore, one who throws an object that is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide is not liable, since these dimensions render the object a domain to itself. Interesting. So, a basket, however, is round, not rectangular. A round object does not become a domain unless it is wide enough to accommodate a square 4 tefachim by 10 tefachim within it. To do so, it must be considerably wider than 4 tefachim, or if not, the corners of the square will not fit. Right? Will not fit within the article. See diagram. Anyway, we got the point, right?
Yeah.
You have to have we have to follow what happened in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, the only tossing that they did was small objects, and if you toss a large object, that's you tossing a whole domain. So since there is no precedent to it in the Mishkan, you would not be liable. And then we spoke a little bit also about the square and the circle and the circular thing. So if it's a circular thing, you still have to fit in it a box. If you can't fit the box in it, it's not considered a reshus, a domain.
Does it say you can't fit a square peg into a round hole?
You can't
fit a square peg
into a round pole.
It depends how
into a round
the hole is. You'll see on
But if
Look at this.
it's bigger,
That's why they put 6, yeah?
See the
Because
difference?
the
You see
square
the
is
difference
5.6.
between mine and yours?
What?
Wow. Yeah. That's
Yep.
a big difference because you don't have the.
I don't have the circle. By you, they put the circle. I think mine is mine.
That's
They
a-
messed up.
Yeah, maybe that's
This is
the
not
You-
mine. This is
Yours,
not mine.
yours is a newer edition, I believe.
This is not mine, alright.
Check the edition when this was printed, because I bet you they made a mistake on this.
93.
Yeah, this you have the circle
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That makes-
What's your edition?
That makes more sense. It's a newer, I think.
This is 2005.
Do you have circles there? Or,
Yeah,
or
I got the
square?
circle.
Oh, I got the square.
Oh, which one is yours? No, this
No,
is
where does the year show? Where,
this is 93.
In the front, yeah, that's the one I bought. That.
this also
that's
says
mine.
from 1990
This
to
one?
1993.
The other one is new.
Yeah.
That one is new.
That you have it like this also, 1990
Can
to
you give me that one?
1993.
Yeah.
This is new.
Maybe this isn't.
This is old. I think.
I bought this one when I was going. Yeah, this one I bought.
This was printed in 2003.
I
Wait,
bought
so-
this.
Look at this
I don't
page.
think it is.
Look at
It's-
this page.
it's a
You have
different
to look at
page.
this page.
Oh,
Yeah, which page is
wrong
that?
page already.
Where you have all the first edition, second
I have,
edition.
I have the first edition. This one I bought for myself in '96.
So this is the third edition here, no?
It says third edition.
Third edition. No, this is 13th impression, January 2020.
I don't have the ball here also. And this is new.
No, it's not new.
No?
You bought it new,
Yeah.
but the
Ah, maybe
printing
I
of
bought
it,
used.
the printing
I
of
bought used it. This one.
you see, this is 1996, 2002. That's when it was printed.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
one
this
is
is
2020.
Also.
But it says you have the circle, right?
Yeah.
That must be a mistake.
Yeah, that's what. That's, anyhow, Rav Omar, we see diagram, and the diagram is off.
Right.
So
They-
Anyhow.
if you go through it's a city.
it didn't make sense because the whole idea was to show me that the circle goes into the box, and it's showing me rectangular
No,
inside a
this the
rectangular.
box goes into the circle.
But can you still
Right,
derive
box
it?
goes into the circle.
Can you still derive it from there though? Or no?
I mean, you get the point, but if you're already showing me a diagram.
No, yeah.
But that's the reason they said 6. Less than 6. Because the square is 5.6. That's the reason?
You still want to. He said, yeah, you're gonna have to have the
Doesn't
circle
fit.
much bigger
Yeah,
to
that
fit the
doesn't,
square
that
inside.
doesn't make sense.
The corners wouldn't fit.
That's
So Rabbi Omar afilu enu rechava shisha. So even if the basket is not 6 tefachim wide, that's why it's good to buy the Gemaras by side note directly from Schottenstein, because if you buy it from Amazon, you get it cheaper, but you're not getting the newer edition. If they send you something, Schottenstein, they would send you the new one. Send the new print, not
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
and the new print has all the emendations, right?
Yeah.
All the
You're
fixed.
constantly getting feedback from people.
Yeah. You get feedback and they fix it. You have to understand this whole thing, this whole Gemara is a new thing. It's never been before that you have a translation like this and commentary. You used to have to, in the yeshiva, have to figure out yourself what
Wow.
the meaning of everything. So, Rav Omar, afilu enu rechava shisha patu, even if it's not 6 tefachim wide, is patu. My time. What is the reason? It is impossible that some slivers of reed should not extend up above 10 tefachim. Slivers is almost like the splinters that come out of the reed. Reed is the bamboo. It comes out of it. So he writes, it's impossible that some slivers of reed should not extend up above the 10 tefachim, resulting in part of the basket being in the exempt area, Mokum P'tu, above 10 tefachim. Since one is liable for transferring into a public domain only if the object is placed entirely within the domain, one who throws a basket 10 tefachim high is exempt regardless of its width. I guess because it's 10 tefachim high. The case discussed to this point is where the basket landed on its bottom, when its rim facing upward. The Gemara discusses a case where the basket landed with its rim facing downward. Kefo alpio. If he turned the basket over its rim and threw it into the public domain face down. Shiva or Mashu, if the height of the basket is up to 7 tfachim and a bit. Chayov, the thrower, is liable. Shiva or Mechza, but if it is 7.5 tfachim or more, Potu is exempt because the top of the basket is viewed as having come to rest above 10 tfachim due to the principle of lavud. Now, what is the principle of lavud? It's important for you to know this one. It says the legal principle of lavud teaches that a space less than 3 tfachim wide is regarded as closed. This principle is an oral law taught to Moshe at Sinai. Accordingly, when an object falls to within 3 tfachim of the ground, it is viewed as though it is extended and touching the ground.
That's the principle we have with building a sukkah, right? With the wall.
Right. We use it primarily in sukkah to make sure that the walls are going all the way down. But you can use lavud. You can utilize lavud.
You mean to not have the wall go all the way down, but say that it is?
He says in the bottom of it, it says the principle of lavud, however, applies only to partitions, not to other matters. The principle of lavud can be utilized in regard to a basket only when it's facing down, where the basket falls bottom down. However, there are no walls extend downward, merely the solid. But the point is, in general, the idea of lavud is that you have space less than 3 tfachim, and it's still considered touching the ground.
Would that be kind of like the...
So if you have about 10 inches or 15 inches off the ground, it's considered like it's touching the ground, even though it does not really touching the ground.
It reminds me of like bathroom stalls, where like you just see the feet of the person next to you. It's like there's the divider, but it's at the bottom. It's just like just that.
Yeah,
much.
yeah, it's true. The bathroom doors
It's
are
open.
public.
Most
bathroom,
of them.
they
Why? Why it's open? Why?
They follow this.
It's
It's
just
like a wall.
easier. It's cheaper.
Also,
It's
maybe
It's
the
ridiculous.
circulation of the
It's
air,
ridiculous.
I think it's ridiculous too.
Why?
I
Why
love
it's
I
open?
love this bathroom that it's closed.
You can. It's easier to see if somebody is there or
It's
not.
ridiculous. Why it's open?
Yeah.
They can see your position if you are facing the.
But you can time how long you should wait though. If you need to go outside or come back in.
So
How much
it's
money
like-
they save?
To Kval Pio, if you turn the basket over on its rim, Shiva or Mashu, if the height of the basket is up to 7 tfachim and a bit, Chayav, the thrower is liable. Shiva or Mechza, but if it is 7.5 tfachim or more, is potter, is exempt, because the top of the basket is viewed as having come to rest above 10 tfachim due to the principle of lavud. Even if 7.5 tfachim high, the thrower is liable. My time, what's the reason? Because the baskets walls are made for their interior to hold. Meaning, what does it mean? They were made for their interior to hold things inside them. Consequently, the basket walls are not meant to face downward regarding the application of negating the application of lavud. We learned above that where an object 3 or more tfachim high stands in a public domain, its top is not accorded public domain status. The Gemara refines this rule further. Omar Ula Amud Tisha Bershus Rabim. If there is a post 9 tfachim high in the public domain, Verabim Mechatfin Olo, and the public adjust their burdens on it. Yet you're carrying something on your back. Back in the day, people would schlep a lot of things on their back, and you see a post in the middle of the public domain, people would adjust it, take that off, refix load their burden and then continue walking. It's miloshin kotif. Chatfin, same as katef, as shoulder in Hebrew. Ktefaim is shoulders, right? Mechatfin, all of they would fix their burden that is on their shoulders. So, v'zoach v'noch al gabo, and one threw an object from 4 amos away. It was a good shooter, and it came to rest on the post. Chayav is liable for transporting an object 4 amos in the public domain because the top of the post has public domain status. My time, what is the reason? Pachos mishloisha, because an object less than 3 tfachim high, midras doseli rabim, the public treads upon, and it is therefore considered part of the public domain. People tread upon it, part of the public domain. Mishloisha vatisho, but if within the public domain there is something that is 3 feet high to 9 feet high, mishloisha vatisho, an object between 3 and 9 tfachim high, loy midos dosele veloy katufim mechatve. The public neither treads upon nor adjusts burdens upon it. So it is therefore not considered part of the public domain. Tisho vaday mechatfin ale. But the post 9 tfachim, if it's 9 tfachim high, vaday mechatfin ale, the public certainly uses to adjust burdens upon it. It is therefore considered part of the public domain. What is the law of a hole 9 tfachim deep? Does it have the status of a public domain since people occasionally use it? Amalei. What do you do with a hole? We spoke about a post, now a hole in the ground. The same is true for a hole. It has the same status of a public domain under these circumstances. This is not, Rava said, this is not true for a hole. A hole is not considered a public domain, even if it is occasionally used by the public. My timer. What is the reason? Tashmish tashmish, because forced usage is not considered a proper usage. It does not render the hole a public domain.
Nobody make a hole to use it. That's the...
No, he meant that if somebody did use this hole, he used it bishat atchak, meaning he used it against his will. It's not. He was forced to use it. It's not something that people occasionally would use. The post is something that people would commonly use if it's 9 tefachim high.
In the laws of like digging holes and like bringing it or whatever, was it 9 tefachim where if you liable if someone does a 10, then is that the measurement, or was it a different measurement?
Yeah, it was 10. 10 makes you.
Then now you become one because you did the last tefach.
If you did the last one, then you are the one.
But 9 doesn't make it, but 10 does make it something. So there's something to do with this 9 here.
Right.
The depth of it.
Because if it's taller, sometimes it changes the shoes. It changes it from public to private. Because people don't tread on it anymore and people can't use it. So, if one's box was laying in the public domain, and the box that you left maybe it was like a Home Depot box, 10 by 4. Like a box
that a refrigerator comes in, that's a very big box.
Yes, it's true. So you're not allowed to carry things to it or carry from it to the public domain. And not from it to not from the public domain to this box. If the dimensions of the box are less than 10 by 4, tfachim, then you're allowed to. Less than this, one may carry from it to the public domain and vice versa. V'chen beguma, and so too with a hole.
It's kind of like a dump or like a big trash can.
Yeah, you said like a box of fridge box.
Like
But it's
we
even
would put something
fridge
in it.
box is actually much more than 10 tfachim. It's almost like 30 tfachim.
Right. But those like roll out trash cans you put in the front yard that you roll out, and then you want to bring a trash bag and put it in there. It might be like 10 fucking by 4, right?
Right, but if you don't have an Eruv, you're not allowed to walk out of your house with a trash bag and throw it. If you don't have an Eruv outside your house.
So even if like your front yard would be considered still private, or no?
Your front yard, your driveway.
Yeah, if you have it on your driveway, you can't just walk out your door with it and put it on your.
If your driveway is fenced, if it's not fenced, then it's a problem because people can walk into your driveway. You're not gonna.
Right.
My love is safer. So Rav Ada explains the last statement and thereby set forth a challenge to Rava. He said, "Does this statement concerning the whole not refer back to the last clause of the writer?" And teach that just as a box less than 10 high has public domain status, so to a hole less than 10 tfachim deep has public domain status. Now this can only refer to a hole 9 tfachim deep. Rava's opinion is thus refuted. The Gemara responds, Lo Aresha. Now it refers back to the first clause of the writer and teaches that a hole 10 tfachim deep and 4 tfachim wide is a private domain. Rava's view is challenged again. ACV challenged Rava from another right, and Iskaven Lishu Lishus Rabim. If one had the intention to establish his Shabbos residence in a public domain, he found himself a spot in the middle of the street that he's going to spend Shabbos there, and he placed his Eruv in a pit adjacent to that site. If the Eruv is above 10 Tfachim, Eruv is a valid Eruv, since he may then retrieve the food from the pit on the Shabbos and eat it at the site of his residence.
That sounds like the Tichum on Shabbos.
Yeah, he created himself a parameter, a Shabbos parameter for himself.
We can do, or we need the rabbi to do this, Rabbi?
Well, if you know how to do it, you can do it.
But you can, like, if I want to stay here, I would do a line like this to here, like this, and
Yeah, you put a post around you.
But what do you need it for here?
No,
If you
go
just,
camping or
just in
something.
case.
What if you go
If you
camping?
go in the middle, I don't know,
If you're
you're
camping at Shabbos, okay, then you need to do a lot of stuff.
stuck in traffic, and
And
I had one time I was driving Friday, the Brooklyn Bridge. I think I was on the bridge.
right.
So there was some kind of accident and nobody moved. Nobody moved for I don't know how many hours. So it's getting to Shabbos. So as soon as I got off the bridge, I parked on the side and I walked home. But if I decided I didn't want to walk home, could have made a Tchum Shabbos. I could have made an Iskaven Lishbus B'Rishus Rabim. Like he just said, a person intend to establish his Shabbos residence, you camp in a place. He's
I
gonna
don't
be a
even gonna
resident.
stay in your car all the time.
You stay in a car, or you
Problem is
stay
you
in the
can't open
street
it
the
'cause
whole
of the
the whole Shabbos. But it took me, let's say, an hour to walk home. But
Right. Yeah, I got it.
You just left your car, you found a parking and stuff?
I take it after Shabbos. I didn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a legal parking.
You
I
just
parked
parked
in the street and the side, but and
You got a
they have
ticket?
alternate side parking. And didn't move it.
You got a
Over by
ticket?
the bridge is not, almost nothing over there. You should say.
Wow. Yeah.
No,
What else?
I mean,
What,
yeah.
no, I tell you, what else are you
Everybody-
supposed to do? You drive on Shabbos. I mean, if you have
I can tell you
kids,
stories. It's like
if you have kids, maybe it's a different story. But little kids, but
you don't want to, but when you get stuck in someplace you're 100 miles from where you need to be, because what are you going to do?
park the car and create this.
Just walk, you just lay there 2 days, you don't eat, you don't do Shabbos, no candles.
2 days. Shabbos is 24 hours.
Friday, Saturday, you gotta wait till Saturday night now to go on your way. What are you gonna do for the whole time? You have no drink, no food, no nothing. You have to get to your destination.
Yeah. Now every situation is different, but anyhow, when you see this guy over here, a person intended to establish his Shabbos residence in a certain spot in public domain, and to accomplish that purpose, he places Eruv in a pit adjacent to that site. The Eruv is above 10 tefachim. Eruv. His Eruv is a valid Eruv, since he may then retrieve the food from the pit on the Shabbos and eat at the site of his residence. If he placed the Eruv below 10 tefachim, any Eruv or Eruv, his Eruv is not a valid Eruv. It says in number 2, one of the conditions of Eruv Tchumin is that one must be able to eat the food at that location after the onset of the Shabbos. So what is the Eruv? A plate of food, not a string. You're thinking of a string.
Yeah.
The plate of food. For this reason, if one can eat, if you want to walk, let's say over here, it's not so relevant because we are still
If you go towards that
in
441,
city limits.
I think that the Erev Tachum is
I
2,000.
think I always said that even if you get all the way to West Palm Beach, you're still in the same.
And the same with this.
Not that you're under the Eruv, but you're still in the same Tchum.
Oh yeah,
It's 2,000 almost.
because there's enough houses around to make it not open.
Yeah, but the 2,000 only starting when you leave the Tchum.
When you leave the Tachum.
Right, but if you're within the Tchum, you can within your parameter. So our
So
parameter is like almost like West Palm Beach,
like
Palm Beach County is our Tchum. But if you live in a small town, like I know in Kfar Chabad, they had to, if you leave Kfar Chabad, you have to count 2,000 and that's it. So at the end of Kfar Chabad, they would put, like meaning at the entrance, they would leave on Friday afternoon, they would leave a plate with food, hide it somewhere on the streets, on the side, by the bushes there, and then it would give you another 2,000 ams to walk if you have to walk to a hospital or something like this.
They do this?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know my father did it a few times. He needed to walk to a hospital to visit somebody on Shabbos. So
But then you have the food that you put there.
So that's what he says now. He says one of the conditions of the Eruv Tchumin is that one must be able to eat
Yes.
the food at that location after the onset of the Shabbos. So this reason, if one can eat the Eruv only by transgressing a prohibition, the Eruv is not valid. Meaning you need to be able to access the Eruv without violating anything, without any prohibitions. If we're dealing with a pit that has 10 or more tfachim in it, ulamailo, and above 10 tfachim means the live oisve, that he raised the Eruv 10 tfachim above the floor of the pit and placed it there. Ulamato and below 10 tfachim means that atay oisve, that he lowered the Eruv and placed it within the 10 tfachim of the floor of the pit. The Gemara says this cannot be mali lemailo mali lemata. What difference does it make to me? What difference does it make to me whether the Eruv is above 10 tfachim from the floor of the pit or whether it is within 10 tfachim of the pit's floor? Hu b'mokim echad v'ruv b'mokim acheru. Either way, he, i.e., his intended residence is in one place and the Eruv is in another place, and he cannot bring the food from one to another. That, when did I say, I gave you the example of Kfar Chabad, but Kfar Chabad itself has an Eruv, regular Eruv, the makes it one reshus, one domain, right? And then from that point and on, you want to walk outside the domain, right? Then you put the Eruv of food, Eruv Tchumin. When we say Eruv Tchumin, it means Eruv of food. When we say Eruv Chatzeros, it means Eruv that closes the yard. makes, let's say, like the example that we mentioned yesterday, a building that we want to share the same yard. So Eruv Chatzot, but it also has to have food involved. And even this Eruv that has the string around the community boundary, around the community, the rabbi still has to make food on at Pesach. He takes a plate with matzah and something and he puts it in the kitchen there. That's part of the Eruv. The food part of it.
So you need to have both
The
for the
Rambam says that everybody contributes to it. I mean, the rabbi can do it. I think the Rambam says that
He has to do it on behalf of everyone. And everyone needs to have it in mind.
To make an Erev Techumin, you can only do it once, right? You can't make one and then from the one that you make with your plate of food, make another. You can't continue to extend it.
Right? No, you can't.
So you can only do one, or can you do like another, like?
I don't think you can do another 2,000 ounce let's say to measure another 2,000, put one there, and then to put another.
No, not say it that way, but leapfrog it. So you do a string Eruv, and then you go 2,000, put a plate. Then you go another 2,000, put another string Eruv, and then you go another 2,000, put a plate, another 2,000. You know what I mean? And just leap it like that. So then you have.
I don't think so. But when we learned Eruvin, they was discussing different different scenarios like this.
Maybe it would be a problem to carry the string in the pole.
Look, you go on your model, right, after the turnpike, it's another arrow. It's the arrow for Chabad Central. But but you can't go across the turnpike if you're carrying.
So either way, his intended residence is in one place and his Eruv is in another place, and he cannot bring the food from one place to another. For why? It says number 4, for if the pit is 10 or more tefachim deep, the entire pit up to its rim has a private domain status. Regardless of where in the pit the Eruv is placed, the Eruv is located in a private domain and it cannot be brought to his intended residence in the public domain on Shabbos, because it would take it from private domain, the pit, into the place that he's staying, which we learned that he's staying in a public domain. So Gemara says, rather, is it not clear that the Bible speaks of a case which the pit does not have 10 tefachim in it? It is not 10 tefachim deep. V'ketani Eruva Eruv, and yet the Bible teaches that his Eruv is a valid Eruv, which means that he can carry food from the pit into the public domain. For this to be true, the pit itself must be a public domain. And the only such case is a pit 9 tefachim deep. Ela alma tashmish aledei adchak shmei tashmish. We see that a forced usage, such as in the case of a pit 9 tefachim deep, is considered proper usage. This refutes Rava's contention to the contrary.
So he said if it wasn't 10, right?
Right. Actually, a lot of people use today pits, and today, but back then they used pits to cook for cooking.
Yeah, depends on Argentina. That's how they cook a lot of their meats and stuff is in pits.
Yeah.
Tastes great.
Zimnin Mishanulai, sometimes Rava would answer this question. The case is where his intended Shabbos residence, and his Eruv are both located in a Carmelis. So why do you call it a public domain? Because it's not a private domain. Because it is not a private domain. And sometimes Rava would answer this question as follows. Indeed, the Bible discusses a case where his intended residence is in a public domain, and his Eruv is in a Carmelis, a pit less than 10 tefachim deep. And as for the problem that transferring from a Carmelis to a public domain is rabbinically prohibited, the Bible is consistent with the view of Rabbi. What's the view of Rabbi? Who says that any activity that is prohibited on the Shabbos by rabbinic law was not forbidden by the sages during the twilight period. Since carrying from a Carmelist to a public domain is only rabbinically prohibited, the Eruv is accessible at twilight of the onset of the Shabbos when it must take effect, and it is thus valid. Rava asserts the correctness of his view and the necessity of explaining the Baisa as he did. Do not say that I am merely rejecting your proof. Rather, I state this position to you very definitely. That now, if there was a shallow pool of water, and meaning it's very low, and the public domain goes through it. It's not deep. Maybe it's knee high. One who throws an object a distance of 4 amas into it is liable, because the pool is considered part of the public domain, because people go through it. Like what we said before, something that is under 3 tefachim, people step on it. And how much is the shallow pool of water of which we speak? How deep can it be and still be considered public domain? Less than 10 tefachim deep. And a shallow pool of water through which the public domain goes. One who throws an object a distance of 4 amas into it is liable. Mishnah apparently teaches the same law twice. The Gemara explains the apparent redundancy. It is understandable why the Mishnah states a shallow pool twice. For one teaches that the pool is a public domain in the summer. One teaches it is a public domain in the winter. And it is necessary for the Mishnah to teach the law for each of these separately, summer and winter. The Mishnah had taught us that the pool is considered public domain in the summer. I would have said it is only then, in the summer. Why? Because people want to cool themselves off. Because it is common for people to want to cool themselves in the summer, and they therefore do not mind walking through a shallow pool in the public domain. But in the winter, it's cold, right? I would have said that the pool is not a public domain because people are reluctant to walk through it. If I would say only in the winter, I would have said that this is only then. Because since people are in any case dirty from all the mud of the public domain, because the rain creates mud and people are dirty anyway, it happens that they step down into the pool as well. But in the summer they're clean and they're not going to walk into the pool. Therefore it is necessary for the Mishnah to state twice that a pool is a public domain, to teach that it is so in both summer and winter, as long as it's under 10 tefachim. But why do I need the Mishnah to say hiluch, going twice? Rather, you learn from this that from this repetition, there is only an inconvenient passage that is considered hiluch, a passage. Tashmish alidat chak. But an inconvenient usage is not considered a proper usage, and therefore does not render the whole a public domain. Shmamina, indeed, learn from this. The koni, regarding a bundle of reeds, if one throws it down and stands it up, throws it down and stands it up, i.e., he lifts one of the bundle from the ground and topples it forward. Wow. Then he lifts the second end from the ground and topples it forward again and again
Yeah.
until it moves the bundle many ames in a public domain. I guess he rolls it.
No, like this. Like.
He rolls it. Yes. So lo michayev ad okol, he is not liable until he lifts both ends of the bundle from the ground simultaneously and transports it for ames.
Maybe it's a shinoi.
Instead, it never actually went off the ground.
Every time one
There's,
part you're gonna touch the
One
ground.
part was touching
There's
the
a
ground.
Poro castle down in Miami or Key Largo or something like that. This guy built an entire thing out of these huge rocks, and no one can figure out how he did it. He didn't let anyone see it. And one day, overnight, he transported it all from one side to the other, and no one could figure out how this older guy was able to move these heavy rocks. He had this secret where he would balance the rocks perfectly on one little edge and just maneuver them just enough to like get it to move.
It's a famous place.
England. England.
A person may stand upon the threshold of a house, take an object from the householder who is in a private domain, or give him one.
So yes, kufa is the question. What was it considered? Rishut harabim or rishut hayach?
Right. Yeah, noitel meoni, because part of the iskupa, part of the threshold is in your house, and part of it is outside your house. That's why it's a doubt.
Right.
So the Gemara says, noitel me balabais v'noisen loy. A person may stand upon the threshold of a house, take an object from the householder who is in a private domain, or give him one. Noitel meoni, likewise, he may take an object from the poor man in the public domain, or give him one. The Gemara asks, what is this threshold that we're talking about? What is the status of this threshold? If you say that it is a threshold possessing the status of a public domain, how may a person standing on the threshold take an object from the householder? Why? By so doing, he takes out from a private domain to a public domain. Rather, you will say that it is that the threshold possessing the status of a private domain. But then, how may one standing on it take an object from the poor man? Why? By so doing, he brings in from a public domain to a private domain. So what do you have to say? Ella, if the threshold is not Reshus Rabim, not Reshus Hayochid, Ella is Kupas Carmelis. Rather, you will suggest that it is a threshold possessing the status of a Carmelist. But then, how can the Brisa state that one standing there is permitted outright to take objects from or give objects to the poor man or householder? Why? In the final analysis, there exists at least a rabbinical prohibition to transfer objects between a carmelist and a private or public domain. Regardless, it's a problem. Whether you say it's private, public domain, or even if you say it's a carmelist, because the rabbinical is prohibited. Ella is skupa mokim ptur balmo. Rather, the Brisa refers to a threshold that is merely mokim ptur, an exempt area, kegoin de leis bei arba arba, such as where it does not possess dimensions of 4 by 4 tfachim. One is permitted outright to transfer objects between such an area and a public or a private domain. Such as when Rav Dimi came to Babylonia, he reported the following in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. If regarding an area less than 4 by 4 that is situated between a public domain and a private domain, Mutar livne rishus hayochid livne v'rishus harav lechatef. All of it is permissible for people. If it's less than 4x4, it is permissible for people in the adjoining private domain as well as people in the adjoining public domain to adjust their loads on it. Provided they do not exchange their loads, i.e. transfer from the public domain to a private domain, or the reverse, via this exempt area. The Gemara discusses the next clause of the above bite. This is permitted as long as the person on the threshold does not take an object from the householder and give it to the poor man in the street. Like he's a middleman. There's a person standing on the threshold, takes from the householder, gives it to the poor. He should not do it. Or taking from the poor, which is in a public domain, and giving it to the householder, which is in a private domain. He may not use his position in the middle to transfer an object from one domain to another. But if he did do it, all three are patur. All three people are patur. The poor, the householder, and the middleman. It would appear from the Brisa that one who transfers an object from a public to private domain, or vice versa, by passing it through an exempt area, is exempt. The Gemara asks, Leima tehevet yuta de Rava. Let us say that this refutes a ruling stated by Rava. Rava stated that Mavir chefetz mitchilas arba lesof arba b'shus Rabbi. One who carries an object in the public domain from the beginning of a 4 amos stretch to the end of the 4 amos, the beginning to the end, even though he carried it, derech olav, by passing it over himself via the exempt area airspace, that is 10 tfachim or more above the ground of the public domain, chayav is nonetheless liable. Rava's ruling, which assumes that we disregard the object passage through the exempt area, is contradicted by the Brisa, which reckons with the passage and therefore exempt all three people. God willing, we'll continue on Shabbos.
We said
What time Shabbos do we continue?